Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the ceremonies. Sometimes there's a lot of things we take for granted, and in doing these ceremonies over the years, I think we forget about all the people who've been here for so long, and no more so than Janet Watt. 96, here every year. Bill O'Hara, thank you. Leo Leach a little bit earlier, so thank you very much for warming us up and keeping us through the rain, or keeping us dry through the rain, Janet. We invite any veterans and their families. There is room on the stage if you want to come up and join us up here.
Here, I'm gonna help you guys. Kevin.
Yes? Pardon me? Oh, yes. So in a moment, you're going to see our initial march past, and we usually wait until we're into the after the march before we introduce people. But I think I'd like you to watch for them as they come by. We have the Toronto Civic Honor Guard, Toronto Police Service Chief Ceremonial Unit, the Toronto Fire Services Honor Guard, Toronto Firefighters War Veterans Color Guard, Toronto Paramedic Services Ceremonial Guard, Toronto Transit Commission Supervisory Honor Guard, Municipal Licensing and Standards Honor Guard, the Canadian Armed Forces HMCS York and 32 Brigade Group, our friends from the Royal Canadian Legion, of course, Army, Navy and Air Force Veterans of Canada, the Queen's Own Rifles, the Naval, yes, fans, definitely fans. The Naval Club of Toronto, Toronto Sea Cadet Alumni Association, Naval Officers Association of Canada, Toronto Branch, the Wren Association of Toronto, the Navy League Cadet Corps Arc Royal, Royal Canadian Sea Cadet Corps Vanguard, the Toronto Police Pipe Band, the Toronto Fire Services Pipes and Drums, Canadian Army Veterans Motorcycle Unit. So give them some appreciation when they come by you. And ladies and gentlemen, we ask you to please stand.
Good parade. Wow. Freedom.
victory in Normandy, France on June 6, 1944. The fight was the largest seaborne invasion in history before or since, with more than 160,000 soldiers storming the French coast to take on the German fighters.
D-Day was a turning point in the Allied victory during World War II.
There were thousands of Allied casualties on the first day of fighting. Thousands of German soldiers were also casualties.
The Royal Canadian Navy supplied ships and about 10,000 sailors.
$14,000 Canadian soldiers landed on the beaches.
$516 Canadian paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines by parachute or gliders.
The Royal Canadian Air Force supported the invasion with many different kinds of aircrafts.
Canadian Prime Minister Mackenzie King spoke to Canadians over the radio on D-Day in 1944. He said, "Let the hearts of all in Canada be filled with silent prayer for the victory of our own and Allied forces and for the early liberation of the people of Europe."
Dwight D. Eisenhower was the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces in Europe in 1944. He said, "The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you."
Franklin D. Roosevelt was the U.S. president at the time of the D-Day invasion. He said, "They fight not for the lust of conquest. They fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate."
Thank you, Canadian veterans.
Thank you for the peaceful and democratic life that we enjoy. Freedom!
Ladies and gentlemen, you can please be seated.
Parade, order, colors.
Good afternoon and welcome to Toronto Remembers D-Day. In the 150 years since Canada entered into Confederation, there have been just a few events, pardon me for that have developed us as a nation. What transpired in Juno Beach during this day in 1944, as well as the months of grueling battle that followed, will forever be a part of our makeup. thousands of brave Canadians participated in an invasion that altered the course of the Second World War.
Stand at ease.
Before we begin, I want to acknowledge especially that we are gathering in the traditional territory, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, and home to many diverse Indigenous people. I'd also like to thank the students at Humber Valley Village Middle School for their special performance of Freedom just a few minutes ago. Thank you very much for that. And to our marchers and to you for being here this morning. I know you braved the rain. Thank you for doing that. Getting a little windy right now, but we should be okay for the rest of the ceremony. I just wonder, if it might be easier if I try this microphone over here, guys. Let's try it. This just a little, yeah, might be a little bit better. Today we remember those D-Day veterans who fought and died for our country, and we recognize their sacrifices for our freedom. I'd like to invite Reverend Greg Armstrong now to lead us in prayer.
Honored guests, family and friends, and especially our esteemed veterans, it is indeed a privilege to be with you today and to offer this prayer. And I would invite you to pray with me as I pray. Creator God, we thank you for the precious gift of life, for this day and these moments. Your word tells us that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for another. Today we thank you for those who lived out that very truth in selfless sacrifice, serving our nation, this province, and the communities within. We are deeply moved and grateful for the brave men and women who daily went above and beyond in answering the call, risking their lives, and for some, ultimately giving their all in service within our Canadian Armed Forces for the peace, protection, safety, and well-being of our citizens and this great nation. They lived and loved and laughed and cried. They were alive. They had vision and dreams and goals. And they answered the call to serve, and they did so willingly. Their lives were not lived in vain, but with purpose and pride and gain. We remember and honor each one of them today, and they will never be forgotten. Thank you, God, for their families, and we ask that you would comfort them and that you would give them your peace, which is beyond our own understanding. You have created within each of us the ability to remember, and we ask that our memories would be sharp and sustaining, lest we forget any and the sacrifices they made, for they have earned our respect and admiration with their lives. For the remainder of this day, the months and years ahead, we would ask for your guidance, strength, courage, and hope. God, grant that the very courageous lives that we are paying tribute to today would live on in the hearts of their loved ones and continue to be an inspiration to us all for the rest of our days. Might we commit today to continue to pray for these families and the healing of hearts and wounded souls in the traditions of faith that we know. Hear our prayers, strong God of mercy, and we thank you for the freedoms that we were fought for and won that allow us today to end this prayer according to our various traditions. Let the followers of Christ pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Let the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Moses pray to the Holy One of Israel. And let each and every one of us pray to the God of our own understanding. And in solidarity, we all say, Amen.
Thank you. I now invite Leo back up and ask you to please stand for our national anthem.
Ready, and John. Harry, color.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong
Porter, colors. At ease. Stand easy.
Thank you. Please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce Deputy Mayor Denzel Minnan Wong on behalf of Mayor Tory and Toronto City Council to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us as we commemorate the 73rd anniversary of D-Day. I would like to begin by welcoming my fellow members of council who are joining us here today. Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Shan, Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Chin Lee, Councillor Doucette, and Councillor Wong Tam. On June 6, 1944, more than 14,000 Canadian soldiers stormed Juno Beach in Normandy, France, and each June we remember those who bravely fought for our freedom and changed the course of the Second World War. We are joined here by a number of courageous veterans, and today we give our thanks and pay our respects to all those who serve for our country. We should also give thanks to the military families and other citizens at home who supported the Allied effort. Right here in Toronto, thousands of people worked just down the street in Liberty Village to ensure our troops had what they needed to fight for justice and liberation. I want to thank everyone in the crowd for helping to keep the memory of this time in history alive. It is especially important this year as we prepare to celebrate Canada 150. If not for the sacrifices made by so many, we may not be in a position to enjoy the freedom, diversity, and energy of today's Canada. I can't imagine a city that might have been less vibrant and open and exciting as today's Toronto, if not for the courage of all of those who had a part in defeating the enemy. It is a privilege to hear the personal recollections of the Battle of Normandy and the Second World War. They are remarkable stories that are sometimes so harrowing they are difficult to share. They are memories and burdens that have altered life's course in a very profound way. This year, we will hear from Trooper Edward Stafford, who was born right here in Toronto. He joined the Governor General's Horse Guard in 1941 and served during the Second World War in both Italy and the United Kingdom. Mr. Stafford's primary responsibility during the war was to drive an armored reconnaissance vehicle. The danger of his service role were inherent, but he returned to Canada in December 1945 and was marched in the Warriors' Day Parade at the CNE for more than 50 years. In 2015, he was named Horse Guard of the Year. I would now like to invite Trooper Stafford to come forward and stand with me as I read the Toronto Remembers D-Day Proclamation. And the proclamation reads, whereas the City of Toronto honors and acknowledges the bravery, courage, and sacrifices of all Canadian veterans who fought for peace and freedom we enjoy today, we shall continue to commemorate those who have served and at the same time be vigilant in our quest for peace around the world. Now therefore, on behalf of Mayor Tory and Toronto City Councillor, I do hereby proclaim June 6th, 2017 as Toronto Remembers D-Day in the City of Toronto, signed Mayor John Tory.
Good afternoon. I'd like first to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on traditional territories to honor especially the First Nation soldiers who I serve with. In particular, my friend William Beeswax. When I was 21, my friend was Herbie Stitt, my best friend. Shortly after Herbie joined the Army, his brother Walter and I realized that we couldn't let him go alone. All three of us joined the Governor General's Horse Guards. I've been a horse guard ever since. Each year I attend the Horse Guards annual dinner. I am now the only World War II member who is able to attend. At each dinner, the honor roll of those who didn't return with us is read out. Both William Beeswax and Herbie Stitt are on that list. The Horse Guards joined the Italian campaign in 1943. The importance of the Italian campaign has been undervalued because we didn't participate in D-Day. However, the Allied liberation of Italy, in which Canadian troops played a critical role, caused Hitler to divert soldiers and resources away from France and tried to hold Italy. Recently, I have had the good fortune to return to Italy and Holland to celebrate the 70th anniversary of their liberation. The Dutch treated us like heroes and have ingrained thankfulness and remembrance into their culture at all ages. 70 years after the war, they were holding up their children to us 90-year-old veterans and telling them that because of us, they have their freedom. As time passes, it's easy for people to forget what happened. There aren't many of us left who actually remember. A lot of good guys went over there and never came back. And those of us that did still live with the pain of that experience. Lest we forget, lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Trooper Stafford. And it's really important. I'm gonna let you set this one out a bit. It's really important what you're saying about not forgetting to remember all the time. So could I ask you just a couple of quick questions? Would you mind? So when you were 21 when you left Toronto?
21, I think. Yes.
And
21.
Now, I've heard so many stories about the troops marching through the streets as they left. Do you remember leaving Toronto?
We were in Camp Borden, and the train stopped at the old North Toronto station, and our parents were there, and we said goodbye and left for overseas.
And they never knew if they were going to see you again. In fact, some of the parents who were waving to the other soldiers with you, they would never see their kids again.
Well, I don't think they really knew we were going overseas. They thought we were moving to another part of the country.
But you ended up over there. And was there a time when you were worried you might not be able to see home again?
There were several times. Can I say something about my friend Herbie Stitt? He was killed just a month before the end of the war in Holland. He was in a battle in which the turret on his Sherman tank was knocked out, and they couldn't turn the turret. He was a corporal, and he was the crew commander. And he got outside of the tank and pulled the gun around while he was under fire all the time. and so that they could get a shot at the enemy. For this, he was awarded the DCM, which is the next highest to the Victoria Cross. It's the highest award that the Horse Guards had during the war. And the problem was, the next day he was killed in an accident. He survived the night, and he was killed the next day in an accident. But that's Herbie's story. I think it's something I should tell about him. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Herbie. It's so important. It's so important for that story to be told. And if you would, we'd like to dedicate a bit of the memory today to Herbie and for his service. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your service. The next portion of the service represents a period of silent reflection, starting with the last post and concluding with Reveille. We will explain the significance of each event for you as it happens here, so that you are, you know what's happening. Now, the last post, you're most likely very familiar with this. It is played by the bugler, usually to signal the end of the day. It symbolizes that the duty of the dead is over and they can rest in peace. It marks a closing of a lost veteran, such as Herbie. The Canadian flag, you will notice, will be lowered to half-mast to the first note as a sign of respect for those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. We then ask you to join us in 2 minutes of silence, remembering those who died or otherwise suffered to show respect to our lost veterans. And then finally, the lament played by a lone piper, a traditional Scottish lament called Flowers of the Forest, a song of mourning and remembrance to commemorate those who perished in the war. And then, of course, finally, Reveille, the bugle call at the start of the new day. Flags are raised on the first note, and as Reveille is sounded, signifying that after a period of mourning, life and duty continue. We ask if you are able to stand to do so and join us in reflecting and remembering.
Break and hunt. Carry colors.
they shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We very much have to remember that in 1944, we were very much part of the British Dominion. In fact, we would fight shoulder to shoulder in some combined force, especially in the RAF. And so it is fitting that Janet Watt will lead us in the singing of God Save the Queen. Please be seated.
Parade. Order. Colors.
So as the ceremony comes to a close, we would definitely invite you to speak to our veterans. The facts of D-Day are well documented. They are written down hour by hour in the history books. But what the history books have not written down enough are stories like Herbie's. And so I encourage you to seek out these stories and remember these people and remember why they did what they did. And that is why we need to keep remembering D-Day and why we need to keep reminding our kids of that and pass these stories on from generation to generation. There's also a D-Day display in the rotunda. I invite you to go and check that out. So we ask you once again to rise and we will march off our colors. Thank you very much for being here and showing your support.
Parade. Attend. Put. Carry. Colors. By the left. Quick. March.